You see the illusion, you see the greater reality, and you continue in the dream, but you're no longer in it. You walk in the dream awake, you play with the illusion and do what you have to do in it, but you see the greater reality. And the greater reality, it's always been there, but you can't get through it by force. You can't, the intellect can't take you through it. It's a surrender. It's a complete surrender. So hi, my name is Michael Rhodes. I've been a spiritual teacher for longer than I care to think about, 30, 40 years. And I'm now talking on Your Superior Self with Trey. And thank you for inviting me.
Oh man, thank you for taking the time, Michael. I'm excited because I'm not only a fan of your work. I'm also on that journey. Same one that you're on, and I think everyone eventually will be on. Why don't we give everyone kind of like a backstory on you, right? Like we kind of have some similarities here because like you were a farmer. I'm very blue collar. My grandfather has a farm. But that turned out now you're an author of 23 books, right? I think it's 23.
23, you've got it right.
23 books, and you are a spiritual teacher. How do you go from farmer to spiritual teacher?
It was a rough ride. I think a lot of it, just to give you a brief sort of story of my background, like I was born in England, and my parents were, there's no such thing as an average parent, but they was dysfunctional as most, but they were also good people. So I grew up well loved. My father was definitely a brilliant man, very intellectual, very left brain dominant. And his father died when he was 2, so he didn't really know what it was to be a parent. And so I grew up with an uneasy relationship with him. But I left school at 14 because I was the school dunce, or the class dunce anyway. And so in actual fact, they didn't get too many bricks in the wall. By the time I left school, I was able to step over the wall, as Pink Floyd would say. Not too many bricks there. And so I went and worked on the farm. And the relationship with my father was a bit uneasy, but nevertheless, I married much against his will at 21. I married an extraordinary young lady, and by the time I was 23, he was dying of cancer of the pancreas. And he was only about in his early 60s. And so suddenly he's gone, and my brother expects to help run the farm. And my mother and he sided against me. And so to cut that story short, I emigrated with 2 children at about, I think I was about 26. I emigrated to Tasmania, which is the island state of Australia. And the emigration was an important aspect of this because suddenly, the family had wanted me to stay there. They all offered to buy me, but nobody said, Michael, I love you. There was never even an offer, which would have embarrassed me if they had. And so I moved to Tasmania and I bought a small farm on the hills. And I planned to be a beef farmer, where you walk around smoking Marlboro cigarettes and you get in and out of your Land Rover and you really don't do any work. Proved to be very different. There was no Marlboro and no, there was a Land Rover. But anyway, in the very first year, I had a plague of caterpillars went through the farm. And that was as devastating as a wave of locusts would be. And suddenly I'm walking around shooting my cattle. They're dying from polluted water holes. And all in all, it was a pretty hard introduction. And so I had to break away from everything that I thought I knew. And I thought I knew a lot. In the middle 20s, you're pretty arrogant and you think you're okay. And it didn't take long to break me down to realize I really didn't know much. And things weren't okay. So looking back, I chose the worst decade in Tasmania's farming history to the beginning of it. I arrived for the worst decade of the 20th century for farming in Tasmania. It went from caterpillar plague to 3-year drought to a rural recession, and one thing after another. And so things had to change. And I learned that the local farmers, they really didn't know much about it at all. And so I didn't begin to tune into the land, but what I found was if I was sat down out in the field with questions, an hour later I got up with answers. And I had the courage to begin to apply those answers. So I began to become an organic farmer. And I was one of the first. And I threw away the books. I learned more about cows from a cow. So anyway, within a year, my beef herd was dead. And for economic survival, I had to go into dairying. It took me 8 weeks to find out I hated dairying, but I liked the cows. And so it was just from one disaster to the next. It took me 8 years to finish dairying before I could move out of that. And in that time, I was a very undisciplined young man, and the cows disciplined me. You know, I had no choice. You have to milk them twice a day. You don't have a choice about that. No good arguing. There's nothing to do. And so one of the stories out of that was that I was very aggressive. I was angry, had to be milking twice a day. I came out in rage. And what I found was as soon as I walked into the dairy, the cows came in. There was hot green liquid shit flying everywhere. And there was nothing I could do to stop it. And now most of that comes from the politicians, but in those days it came from the cows. And one day, this went on for 2 years, and one day it came to an end. And that was one of the moments that was a complete change in my life. I walked into the shed, my usual aggressive, angry self. I didn't know that every cow knew exactly what was going on in me. That never occurred to me. But one of the tall Frisians, as she walked in, she kicked out and she caught me on the large thigh muscle and completely dead-legged me, as you know the term. It's like they paralyzed that leg. And I was fighting not to fall headfirst in the moo-poo. And so I lost it. I normally never lose my temper, but that moment I lost it. I reached down and got the leg chain that you hold the leg back with for milking. And I swung it round my head 2 or 3 times. Okay, I wasn't always a lovely man I am today. And I swung it round my head a couple of times. And I don't know what went wrong, but she kicked out again. And because she wasn't in the bale exactly, she kicked out again, caught the end of the leg chain on her ankle, ripped it out of my hands. She kicked, and this thing spun about 3 more arcs, and at full speed, it wrapped round my left arm. And the pain was absolutely excruciating. I thought for a moment I was going to faint. The pain was so bad. But in that moment of excruciating agony, it was as clear as, it was absolute clarity to me. I did this to myself. I am the author of all this agony in the moment and in the milking shed. And I didn't know it, but in that moment of intense pain, something in me completely changed. Now, I was laid up for 5 days. It took 5 months before the bruise came out of the bone. It went right down into the bone. If you just went like that a month later, that was agony. So I had to be very careful. But it was 5 days before I could milk again. My wife, meanwhile, did it. She was always quiet in the dairy. It was completely different. It was embarrassing. Anyway, when I went back, now this was interesting. I knew that I had changed. I knew it. Every cow knew that I had changed. Yet of all my circle of friends, nobody knew I'd changed except my wife. Nobody. But every cow Now, this didn't work out right for me. How can a cow know I changed and a person didn't? And so I went in, I changed in the way that I was quiet and gentle. I was patient. There was no frustration. I just went in with this changed energy. The cows knew there was no shit flying around. Everything went easier. I got more milk, more cream, and that remained, that continued. In the end, I didn't even use leg ropes, and this continued for the rest of my milking. But then that began to move out, and I began to realize that something was happening to me. And as I became an organic farmer and was changing there, as I was changing the farm was changing me. And that began the process that put me on my spiritual path. I'll share one other story that ended my career as a dairy farmer, but deepened my spiritual path. About 8 years had gone by, and I was extending, I bred all the dairy cows, which were Friesians, with Hereford bulls. And so I was breeding my way back into being a beef farmer, which I really wanted to do. And so I'd acquired some more land. I don't know, that's another story, but we won't go into that. It was once forestry. And so it was a few trees, 180 acres, a few trees covered in bracken above my head. And so I went in there, I worked day and night practically. I cleared it all, I got all the bracken, I sowed it with grass, and as the bracken came up, I would go in and regularly slash it with a chain slasher. And that rips it apart. Like a knife cuts it evenly and it recovers fast, but the chain smashed it. And so it was gradually killing it and bleeding it away. And it was lunchtime and I got the chain slasher. I switched the engine off at the tractor and I just was going to have 20 minutes eating a sandwich. And as I switched the engine off, there was complete silence. And that caught my attention because there's never complete silence. When you're surrounded by forests going up the mountain, because I was on the side of a mountain, that was my farming, Mount Arthur. And there was complete silence. There was no birds, there was no wind, there was no sound. And I'm standing there thinking, God, this is weird. What's going on? No sound. What happened to the birds? And I could see the tree branches moving in the distance, but there was no sound. And normally you can sort of hear the susurration of the wind in the distance, nothing. And so I found this very puzzling. I just laid down and started to eat my sandwich. And then I'm looking up in the air and there's an Australian wedge-tailed eagle just spiraling round and round above my head. And I thought, oh, wow, that's beautiful. And I watched him and my thoughts were getting quieter and quieter, which was very unusual for me. My thoughts are pretty wild and pointless in those days. And gradually the silence moved into me. And the last thought I remember was, wow, what it would be like to fly like an eagle. And there was an inner movement, and suddenly I'm looking down on me, looking up, and I'm looking from the eagle's viewpoint. And I didn't lose it. I nearly lost it, but I stayed with it. And as the eagle, my vision was far greater and far clearer, maybe 10 times more powerful. And I was looking at the forest all around this 180 acres, or around 3 sides of it. And the forest went right up into the mountain. And I could see where my cows had made tracks into the forest. And I didn't know they ever went in there more than a few meters, but they went in a long way. And as I'm looking around, I could see the whole farm and I could see me looking up. And then I become aware that as the eagle, I'm looking through the eyes of immediacy. Whereas I realize in that moment, all humanity would look through the eyes of yesterday, through the eyes of our knowledge, through the eyes of our beliefs, through the eyes of our education. We never look through the eyes of the moment. We lose that by the time we're probably a year or 2 old, it's gone. We look through the eyes of our belief systems and so on. And I was looking through the eyes of immediacy. And as I realized that, right across the field between myself and I was laying near the tractor, and then there's a space, and then there's the forest, a great gulf appeared, like a bottomless gulf. And I'm looking at it, and I realized this was the gulf of separation. And on the one side was nature, on the other side was me, and I represented humanity. And I realized we had lost our connection with nature. And in that moment, I decided I will make that connection. The rest of my life will be devoted to reconnecting with nature. And with that realization, the eagle dropped about 20 meters maybe, just folded his wings and dropped. And I continued on and crashed into my body. And it was a life-changing moment. I tried to deny it, but the memory was too powerful. I couldn't deny it. I knew I would never forget that experience. And it took me, let's just say I left farming, and for the next 15 years, my whole life followed my spiritual path to cross that gulf of separation. When I was 49 and 3 months, I went through the experience of spiritual enlightenment, and also I crossed that gulf. And in that moment of crossing the gulf, the realization was there is no gulf. It's completely created by their intellect. There is no gulf, but you've got to cross it to know it isn't there. And so, it put me on a different path, and I eventually became a different person. But my path was pain and suffering. And at the end, I really thought I was dying. I didn't think I was going to survive the process. But clearly I did.
There's so much I want to talk about in that. You talk about the one thing I'm just going to go through this book. It's called From Illusion to Enlightenment, which I think I've highlighted so much material in here. It's just so worth everyone's read. Pick it up right now, read it.
Without playing false modesty, it's a brilliant book. I wish I'd read it beforehand. I wish I'd had it on my journey.
Glad you went through all that suffering so I can read this book. I'm telling you right now.
Yes, and I think that's brilliant.
But you talk about newness and sameness, right? Like you had what you're talking about with nature and that connection, like you were looking at a river, but you were just seeing the river for what it is. You were just seeing it as a river, but something changed in you where you see it differently. Can you talk about that?
Well, I went at a certain stage in all my development, I wanted to learn to listen, because I was aware that we don't see. We see out the eyes of yesterday, and knowing that doesn't change anything. It doesn't change. We still look through the eyes of our intellect, our beliefs and everything. But I knew that could change, and we don't listen. We hear people talking to us. But if two people are talking to each other, one person is in their head going through their replies, and they're not listening, and the person who's speaking is not even listening to themselves. So we've lost listening to and exchanged it for hearing. So subconsciously we hear. Listening is a conscious act. Seeing is a conscious act. But we have become a subconscious species. Bruce Lipton says about 94% of humanity is subconscious. And there are no subconscious techniques to make yourself more conscious. So becoming more conscious, you have to do things. And so I decided to learn to listen to the river. And I would sit there every day. It took 5 years. I'm persistent. I don't give up. And that's how long it took me to learn to listen. And, I'd hear the river, I'd hear the sounds, I'd hear tractors, I'd hear people in the distance, I'd hear cars going by, I'd hear crows, I'd hear birds, everything I could hear. But every day I'd go down to the river. And I wrote about this in my book, Talking with Nature. And so every day I'd go down to the river and listen. Sometimes I'd be there an hour or two, sometimes 2 or 3 minutes. Sometimes the mosquitoes would drive me away. Sometimes it would rain on me. Sometimes everything happened. And sometimes I'd get so bored with myself, I'd just get up and walk away. But anyway, I stuck with it. And a lot of things happened. But the point is, to leave all the stories out, there came the moment when I began to have a breakthrough. I began to hear the metaphysical river, because we're metaphysical beings living in a metaphysical world. The idea that we're physical in a physical world is a complete illusion. There's no reality, no truth there whatsoever. But that's a good game to play if you really know what's going on. And not a lot of people do. And so eventually the river spoke to me. And I could listen to nature, I could listen to trees, I still can. I can now listen to the universe, but that's another story. But one day the river said to me, and that was a shock, it said, "Do you see me as new?" It's like, oh God, I've just gone through one set of lessons. We've got to start another one, because the river is flowing past you all the time. Now, if you threw a stick in and watched the stick, you'd have to walk along with the river. And then you'd see the same bit of river. But the river, as it flows past you, is endless newness. And I didn't see the newness of the river. I could listen to it now, but I couldn't see its newness. And so I decided I'd practice seeing the newness in my wife. Well, I couldn't. Every day it was the same wife. I tried my kids, the same aggravating kids, 4 of them every day. It was so predictable what they'd do and say. And so a year went by and I still couldn't crack it. And then one day as I woke up, I had this inner knowing. Because if you persist, you get help. And this inner knowing, through my intuition, said, only the newness in you can see the newness in the moment and the newness in your wife. Oh, why didn't you tell me that earlier? So it took me nearly another year to find the newness in me. And when I found the newness in me, I went down to the river and I saw the newness of the river. And that day, the river then, instead of flowing past me, it flowed through me. And that was the beginning of the end, because within 6 weeks, I had to move out. My bridge board had gone. But now I saw the newness in my wife, the newness in myself, the newness in life. So I could hear, I could listen to the newness, and I could see the newness. This was my particular journey, and I made it probably as difficult as I could. But it was incredibly rewarding, because you never lose that, because you have to be conscious to see the newness of the river. There were journeys and there were experiences I had to go through in listening and seeing the newness. But that says it basically what happened.
Well, is the newness, recognizing the newness, like the newness of energy in someone? Like, so when I wake up in the morning, I'm new energy flowing in this body. Like, is that what you mean by that?
I mean, that's what I mean by every moment of your life, you're a new person. But we have a program that continues more of the same. And so instead of living newness, we live more of the same, on and on, on and on. And eventually we die. We've never really lived. We've just been through the repeat of more of the same. But the subconscious program is more of the same. That's what it is. You can't bring newness into the subconscious program because it's a more of the same. It's the basis of what it is. So you can't have newness in it. And the subconscious is not bad or wrong, and you never get rid of it. But you can bring in, let's just say you're looking in a pond. I sometimes use the analogy of the pond skaters. You know what a pond skater is. It's that little insect. It's a little long-legged insect, and you'll see it on all the ponds. He skates over it. Now, if he goes underwater, he's dead. The skin of the water, he can't get above it. So he skates over it, and he's a predator. And he can grab things underwater and pull them out. But if he goes in, bye-bye. So let's say we are the pond skaters. And let's say the pond is the subconscious. Now, we skate over it at the very best. Most people are under the skin and in the pond, and you can learn to get above the skin and you skate over the pond, and that's okay, because all the air above you, that is consciousness. And so you skate over the subconscious pond, but you're now in the conscious reality. You're fully conscious. And when I say fully consciousness, there's not a point where you hit the ceiling. The more fully conscious you become, let's say the Christ was more fully conscious than I am, and the Buddha, but I'm heading on. I realize there's no ceiling, so I keep growing more and more in consciousness. And I don't need anything outside of me to teach me, because there is nothing outside self. You know, I am the world, I am humanity, I am the universe. And so when you realize that, you allow the teaching to flow from within, because there is no without. Mm. And then it's eternal newness. Mm. It's fun.
Well, it is fun.
And the whole aging process, as you become more conscious, slows down, because love is involved. Now, I don't know what I look like, but I'm 84. And my energy is better, is higher. I'm more healthy and higher energy than I've ever had in my life. And I find this an exciting process. I'm not as strong as I was in my 40s physically, but I'm strong enough.
Well, you look great for 84, right? I think I've listened to everything. I think I've watched every YouTube video you have. I'm down to two, I read 2 of your books. I just love the material. I love your message. You talk about the illusion of reality, though. Like, this is an illusion. For people that haven't read your stuff, what do you mean by that?
Okay, let's look at what's going on today. The humanity is going through the ringer. Now, I've been talking for the last 30 years, but I've been traveling the world as a spiritual teacher. For the last 20 years, all this century, I've been saying, we're in trouble, folks, because we don't have nowhere to go. We've become predominantly a subconscious species, and nature does not allow you to keep more of the same forever. Intellectually, we're growing, but where is the intelligence? We're polluting our oceans. The way we're going, they'll be dead by 2050. We're wiping out our forests. We're polluting the atmosphere. Clearly, intelligence is not being used. Show me a government with any intelligence whatsoever. We're Homo stupidus. Where's the sapiens? Wise humans? There's no wisdom to be seen. Now, I love humanity. I have no choice. I love who I am. I love myself. And I am humanity. I really, really love humanity and have enormous respect for humanity. But I also recognize humanity in our reality is a kindergarten school. This is, if you look at three-dimensional reality, there are over 300 levels of different frequencies of it. We're just one of them. When we do a census, we say that's how many humans. It's laughable. 8 billion. I mean, God, that's just one. That's a stick in the middle of the river. We're discounting that we are the river, not just the stick. And so this is exciting stuff. So right now, this humanity had no future. And it's interesting. They have programmed many computers, extremely sophisticated computers designed to give a forecast of where we're heading. And none of them saw us reaching the end of this century. And that's on a completely non-emotional, non-consciousness level. This is purely logistics. And to me, that was blatantly obvious. Something had to happen. And so I predicted that there would be a pandemic of dementia. Well, in a way, it's a pandemic of fear. Forget COVID. The patent was applied for in 2009. 10 years later, they released it. That's completely man-made to bring about what's going on. And so we have an interesting, fascinating paradox, a total paradox. Long, long ago, the consciousness of humanity realized the probability, because all future is probabilities, and the probability was not good. The outlook was not good. And so we began to create our own means, one humanity, to put us through the vice that would smash the illusion. And so the cabal and all that, and all the low energy reptilians, because there's several layers of reptilian energy, like there is in humanity, and the lower energy is high tech, and they, with others, high tech, low energy, became part of the cabal to imprison and enslave us. Why? Because the humanity was growing deeper and deeper into victim consciousness. Now, if you have victim consciousness, which is obvious as you look at humanity, if you have victim consciousness, you are going to have the victimizer. So as the victim consciousness grew, so we grew the victimizer to show us that we are victims. And so that over the last 1,000 years, that's been growing and growing and growing until it reached the time, and the timing was appalling for the cabal, but until it reached the time when either human consciousness succumbed and we all became victims, which is the program of the cabal, to enslave us with the vaccination, which penetrates the brain barrier, so we all can become compliant, or to rebel against it. And as you rebel against it, as we begin to awaken, more and more people are now seeing the illusion. They're seeing the whole process is becoming exposed, and the cabal are no longer behind the scenes. They're right out in the front now, trying to control us. They own the media, they own the pharmaceutical, they own practically everything. And so the media's lies and all the deceit is going on. It's all breaking down because more and more where they've lost is this whole thing is being driven by love. You know, there isn't the goodies and baddies. The whole chaos of today is love driven, because love is all there is. There isn't anything else. Humanity is love made manifest. Nature is love made manifest. Everything is love. And so love, which created this whole vast scenario, said, look, you created this, you've got to break it. And so love is creating the chaos, and in the chaos, the timelines are separating. And so one part of humanity, the smaller part, which will number in maybe hundreds of millions, will move on, and I'm an optimist, yes, will move on into a higher frequency, but the greater numbers, the billions, will move on and have to play this Kabbalistic surrender compliancy thing out in their own way. I won't be playing it out because I won't be silenced. I'm still on my Facebook screaming out and saying, no, this is wrong. And they've tried to shut me down a few times, but hey, I'm still there. I'm still going. And so this is really what's going on. So it's man-made. So this is all good. It's all good. There's no such thing as death. We're eternal souls. And so we're so caught up in the horror of death. It doesn't exist. It's every time a human being dies, physically, the physical death, there's the opportunity to break out the illusion and to realize, hey, I'm not dead. I'm still alive. I'm a metaphysical being. But we come back straight in the same illusion. Somewhere it had to break. And nothing's going to break it for us. So we are responsible for creating a third world war, which is a war where the only weapon that wins is unconditional love. That's the only one. We've done thousands of wars with weapons of violence, and it just leads to the next war. Now, finally, we're in a place where more and more people are realizing the only way is love. So for years, my signature tune has been ... choose love. And now more and more people are choosing it. And not just through me. There's thousands of us like me. We're all individual, but Okay, so that gives you a sort of an overview.
Sure. No, I love listening to you talk. You are that energy. All life is you. You are all life. Thus, you are the creator of your life. Um, we are that one energy. So that's like that Christ consciousness, right? Like that we are one with source. We are, like you were talking about, that metaphysical being. Like, when did you start realizing this for yourself?
Well, spiritual enlightenment, a lot of people tend to say I was enlightened in a certain year. Spiritual enlightenment is in the moment. So you could say the physical body was a certain age in a certain year, 49 and 3 months. But that's nothing to do with enlightenment, because it's spiritual. It's not physical, although the body likes it, I have to tell you. You stop beating yourself up. But for 2 years, I am answering your question, for 2 years I sat on the plateau of stupidity, of enlightened complacency. And finally you realize this is a bit dumb. And so you finally come down off the plateau, and then you realize, hey, all I've ever done is come out of kindergarten. And now there's junior school, so why don't I enroll? And so I enrolled in junior school, and there are 7 grades. When you reach 7th grade, you're done. You're no longer in this physical reality. I'm probably in 5th grade. I'm in 5th grade right now. I'm not sure if I'll stay alive long enough in this body to get to 7th grade, but I don't plan on dying for at least another 30 or 40 years. So I'm sort of going to give that a shot. Anyway, and when you come down and go into the junior school, then your lessons, everything starts growing bigger. You realize that enlightenment is good. You come out of kindergarten and you no longer need to beat yourself up. You can sort of start choosing love. Now, in this comes another bit of a story. My first wife, you'll read this. I don't really like to talk about it too much, but when I was 49 and 3 months, and that moment of physical enlightenment, Michael walked out, and he had a soul agreement, and Mixael walked in, and I came from a 5th dimension. I tell you, I don't often talk about this. I think it's the first time online. And so I walked in from a 5th dimension. So I had a vast, huge knowledge that I couldn't comprehend how I knew so much of spiritual knowledge. However, spiritually I was aligned with the 5th dimension, but emotionally I was not. And so I had to come back into a 3-dimensional reality to deal with my emotions, because this is where you bring them into balance. And so that was a choice. And I came with about 20,000 others. And not that they had to come, but we came because the probability of now was already known to us. And we came back to be part of the matrix that would lift the humanity and make sure that it didn't collapse, that we win. And so we wanted to ensure that probability that love wins would happen. But for me, I also needed to deal with my emotions. I figured 2 years should fix it. 20 years later, I was nowhere near. I'd gone into, you see, when you're emotions are tough things. No, I've met many races, many species of beings. I've met many. I have never met any with anything like the human emotions. They're unique. And by the 6th dimension, our emotions and our mental body, our emotional body becomes one with the spiritual body. And our emotions allow us a means of communication far beyond anything that the intellect allows. I've experienced it briefly, and it's so far beyond the intellectual, which is so limited. But that's where we're stuck at the moment. And so I wasn't getting anywhere. And my wife, from the moment I walked in, she kept saying, I want to go home. I want to go home. And I knew what that meant. And she knew, we both knew I was a walk-in, but then there'd be long periods I would go in such denial of that. And so that was time wasted in a way.
Well, explain
And
the
so
walk-in. What, I'm still learning
a
too.
walk-in is another, before, let's say before Michael was born, when I'm in a higher dimensional realm, I have in my soul family, there's another, because they're not all in the same frequency. There was Mixile who said, I have to incarnate into Earth. I'm onto a free dimension. I've got to do this. I can put it off, but I've got to do it. And I've got to deal with my emotions. And Michael said, well, the probability is strong. After my last life in a monastery, that was hell. But it gave me everything I needed. The probability is strong that I will become enlightened in this life. And so if I do, I'm out of here. I'm walking out. I'm done. It's too tough, that three-dimensional realm. I need a break. I've been tortured to death so many times. I need a break. And so they both said to each other, okay, we're in the same soul family. When you walk out, is it okay if I come in? I will take your body. And so please don't go and die. And so Michael said, okay, I'll keep the body alive, but I can't guarantee what shape it will be in. And so Mexel said, I will take the body. And so at the moment of enlightenment, it's quite a story. You'll read in one of my books, I walked down the timeline and changed the past so that I'd become the person who would become enlightened. We can do that. We can do a lot of things we don't think we can. So he walked out and I walked in. That name is Mixael, but I refer to myself as I. I walked in and the body was in terrible shape. It was dying. And so I did a one-off healing. I healed it of everything. It had a back injury for 20 years with long periods of paralysis. I healed that. I healed the cellulitis, which caused the swelling of the left eye. I healed everything. And but then I got caught up in the illusion. I had no idea in the fifth dimensional world that the three-dimensional illusion was so powerful. Boy, they need to come and try some of this. Anyway, I did try it. So 20 years later, I'm in 2006, I'm in America. I'm in Austria, and suddenly, Germany, sorry. And suddenly my wife has a pain stab through her. And she goes to hospital, they can't find anything wrong. She takes herself out of hospital, we fly to America. And in America, she's not fully well, but she's okay. And then we've been there about 3 days, and suddenly she's feeling pain again. And so we rush her into hospital. And over on the West Coast, we rush her into hospital. And I phoned that night, and she's under sedation. They're giving her morphine. Next morning, 6:30, I phone. She's okay. She's come through the night, and I say, okay, I'm about to start in intensive that morning. And at 6:45, they ring up and say, your wife's taken a turn for the worse, which I realize is an American expression of saying she's dying. And so I go in, and when I get there, she died. She's in the body is still alive, but she's no longer in it. And I sort of give her permission to die, and I give them permission to take her off. And what she's had is a massive aneurysm in the chest, a massive aneurysm. They couldn't touch it. And she didn't want to be here. She finally was going home. And so the next year, I discover that although I'm spiritually enlightened, and enlightened people don't like to hear this, but although I'm spiritually enlightened, I know nothing of love. And that was a shock. How could you be spiritually enlightened and not know what love is? Anyway, so for that year, she's a teacher for me. And I wrote that. That's about the first book of Through the Eyes of Love, book 1. And if you're reading that, that's the book where I write about this in Through the Eyes of Love, book 1. And so at the end of that year, I go through a metaphysical experience with her. And finally, I let go of her. I'd held on. I held on metaphysically. And she was basically saying, this is not love. I need you to let me go. I need to continue my journey. I need you to let go. This is not love. And I'm realizing it, and I'm reaching the point where for the first time, it's sort of in my life, I can do something for somebody else that is completely not what I want. And I let her go. As far as I'm concerned, that's it. We'll never see each other again. And after 49 years of marriage and being convinced this is your soulmate, as it was for Michael, but I wasn't Michael. So in that moment, I let go. I'm in an extraordinary experience. I feel my heart, and I could go into all the details. I feel my heart energy changing. It goes up through my body into the brain. The brain, whole brain, engages the pineal that goes down to the solar plexus. My emotion, which is the emotional center, that comes into balance. My whole body changes, every cell in my body. I feel it happening on this metaphysical level. And I feel unconditional love for myself. And I realize that I am Mixael, and I finally reach a full acceptance of that. And so within, the knowing that I had from the fifth dimension floods in much more. So I'm still a mixture of Michael, the personality, the humor, but there's also the Mixael. And each year now, from 2007 this happened, there's more of Mixael. I wouldn't say there's less of Michael. I love his sense of humor and I ain't letting it go. And so I've now found a beautiful amalgam of the energy of Michael, which is, he's gone. He's with Trini and they're gone. I'm married again to the lovely Carolyn and I need her. I mean, she matches me in many ways. I need her. And if I'm going to continue, I work better with a mate, with a soulmate. And so she is for Mixael, the soulmate that Trini was for Michael, but he walked out. And from that moment, on a soul level, she knew and she wanted to be with him. So she is and has been since 2006. And I think that's wonderful. And so that's a story I never tell online and don't plan to do it too often. And that is a very brief summary.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. I appreciate
that's where some of this stuff comes from that expands so easily into greater and greater knowing. It's something for me that in the moment is the universe. In the moment, everything that is is. And more I tune into that moment and keep expanding with it.
Well, I guess my frustration is like, I'm persistent like you, right? Like I go down every morning and I meditate and I get into where I can silence the mind and have, I don't know if you call it visualizations or if it's the imagination or whatever, but like, I don't know what is what. Like, and then when I'm done, like I feel good about meditation, right? Like I feel good about what I'm receiving, but it's like, I'm still questioning whether or not, like, you talk about, I haven't been able to detach from the body and have like the eagle story you're talking about, but I have been able to speak to the universe, I think. But then again, is it me speaking or is it like me wanting to do that so bad that I'm making myself think that I am? Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, I get it fully. Let me say one thing. You have made a quantum leap from the man you were to the man sitting here today. Do not belittle yourself. You've made a quantum leap. I mean, you gave up, the whole idea of being rich and famous and all that, and you took on a much more humble role that allows you to grow while you help humanity to grow. And so you've already made a quantum leap. You're in the new. That's unquestionable. Otherwise, you and I wouldn't be sitting here talking, because I could know that the moment I saw you on screen. So I realized your words and your reality match. Mm-hmm. So now I was in a fifth dimensional reality. I was considered a pretty damn good traveler. That was something I did. It was, a lot of them can do it there, but a lot of them never do. So it's not something you have to do. It's a skill that I've had for a long time, this metaphysical traveling. It's not something you have to do. I teach it in my online stuff, but I teach it indirectly rather than directly. And it's not something you have to do. What I would suggest you do, I was always very fortunate. My great fortune as Michael was that I was not an intellectual. I was very right brain dominant. And so I was on a path that I didn't understand, but I didn't need to understand. And that was my gift. That was the gift that was given to me. I didn't need to. Everybody wants to understand where they're at. And if you understand where you're at, you're just going in circles because the moment is always new. And so the subconscious cannot go into the moment. It can't journey into the moment because it's new. And yet in the moment is where love is. It's only in the moment. So subconsciously, 94% of humanity have never experienced it. So we've got a substitute. You could call it human love, but it's not unconditional love. And I'm not saying that makes 94% wrong. But this is the illusion that has to be smashed. It's dangerous. It has to be smashed. And so to me, you're doing very well. But what I would say is let go of the need to understand and let go of the need to follow anybody else's path. Just allow your deeper self, the sovereign you, the superior you, just allow it to come out. And you do not need to understand, because everything we do from knowledge, it has a use-by date. If I sit in a room with 20 people and I tell one a simple, clear story, he tells it to the next and it goes round to the 20. The story comes back is not what I set off. Knowledge is exactly the same. It comes polluted, diluted, changed, and we think it's the same knowledge. It doesn't work. And so let go of the need of knowledge, let go of the need to understand, because what you understand is the past. You're not the past. You want to become somebody of the new. So if you hold on to the past to understand where you're at, you stay where you're at. It impedes growing. So you don't understand, and somebody says to you, so what's going on, Trey? And you say, I don't have a clue, but it feels good. We're in good country then. That's where things are getting good. That book, I didn't want to write it because as soon as I put words down, it isn't what it is because the words are too limiting. But finally, Khalil Gibran said, you've got to write it. Even if you don't write like me, you need to write it. 20 years I sort of messed around and finally I decided, okay, I'm at the point to write the book that I needed to make me the person who could write the book.
I have to say this quote because it's really, I underlined it, I highlighted it. You trust yourself without any conditions, hour by hour, day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year. You simply continue to consciously keep on trusting self. I'll explain a little bit more about trust and creation. Remembering what I told you about the one energy of humanity, nevertheless, every person is an individual field of energy. And then you go on to talk about how you create, eventually you call it stitching, right? Like you're stitching together this new energy into your own personal field of energy. And this new energy is trust. Can you talk more about that? Because that is something that I have always struggled with is unconditional trust.
Okay, that's a good one. Yeah. Let's just say unconditional love is a coin or this hand, because you can see this hand. This side is unconditional love. This side is unconditional trust. So you can't separate unconditional love from unconditional trust. The package of unconditional love is vast. It's not just a word. We have words and words reduce. They don't really carry the energy. I get, passionate about the subject. I tend to put energy in it. But if you read the word unconditional love, the fact that this book has hit you so hard says to me a lot about where you're at. That's good. So now, if you decide to unconditionally trust yourself, who are you? You're a magnificent, metaphysical, multidimensional, immortal, eternal being of love, the power of creation, and light, the light of creation. Now, come on, that's quite a package. And that's you. That's quite a package. Now, that's who you trust, because that's who you are. The personality, identity, body, it's just an illusion. It's a game we play. But it's a very convincing game, but it's just a game we play. So you're trusting who you are. Now, when you just keep on trusting, doesn't matter how many times you let yourself down, betray you, irrelevant. You keep on trusting. Now you're sending out a message to the universe, which is you anyway, but you could call that the superior you, the sovereign you. And so the superior you said, oh my God, he's serious about this. So you set your intent. And so the superior you takes notice. The superior you tells you, if you keep doing this, you're going to change the universe. Because this is something else. We each live in our own world. Everybody thinks they live on one earth. Well, that's a great illusion also. But we each live in our own world. And all worlds occupy the same space. And now in this whole thing that's going on, I have absolutely no concern because I'm in my world, and my world is a world of love. It doesn't matter what they do, they can't infringe on my world of love. And if the more and more people keep making worlds of love, the more powerful that influences other worlds of love. And so that means that if you're unconditionally trusting, your world will now honor unconditional trust, and it will reshape itself. So it will appear that the external world reshapes itself. You won't see any difference, but trust and you begin to sing a different song from the rest of people. Now, if you understand that, it ain't going to happen. But if you just simply trust unconditionally, then you create a new world where your world trusts. I have the minimum insurance. The insurance I have is because the law says I've got to have it. And so that's fine. But there's an old saying, you've probably heard it, believe in the Buddha, but tie up your camel. Now that's fine. But the time comes when we grow enough to believe in the Buddha, and you don't need tie up the camel, because if you have that degree of trust, the camel will be there exactly the moment you need it. That's the place we've got to be. And so why do we have insurance? Because we don't have trust. So we insure. And so if you trust, they say trust will move mountains. I haven't moved any mountains, but I'm quite convinced that if you've got a bush fire coming toward you and you trust, and you put that trust like a comb over your whole property, and you trust, and you connect with the fire elemental, and you give it your love and blessings and trust, it won't touch you. It will split and go around you. It will jump you. It won't do you, because trust creates newness and new worlds. But that trust, now Jesus, and I'm not a Christian even, but Jesus said, the peace that passeth understanding. You've heard that. We need to find the peace that passes beyond any understanding. That is the key. If we understand, we're in our old limits. When you have trust, I don't understand my trust. It just changes my world. I just love it. But as for understanding it, I don't have a clue. But I experience it. I can talk around it. But it's the same with unconditional love. I love me unconditionally. What that is, I'm not really sure, but I like what it is. And so peace, I have total inner peace. But we have world leaders who go to peace talks. Not one of them has ever experienced it. All they can talk about is not war. They can't talk about peace because they don't know what it is. Mm-hmm. And so all those things pass beyond our understanding, which what understands, the intellect needs to understand. The intellect is a wonderful tool, but as for a leader, as for running your life, It sucks. It hasn't a clue what's going on. It just plays with the illusion. And so you've got to let go of the need to understand and allow yourself to have the need to experience. I have conscious experiences that I can't put a thought to. I can't put a word to, but they're in the state of consciousness and I'm comfortable with it. I'd love to be able to write about it, but I can't, because the moment I bring it into a linear term to understand, that's not what it was. And so I have to accept that.
What about like when you go to sleep, that dream experience, and then like meditation? Like, which one do you put more stock in? Like, I know, like I have some pretty wild dreams, but my meditations can be just as wild. Like, which one would you?
Well, I think you have to be true to yourself, maybe the superior self. And so I started off with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi's Transcendental Meditation. Did you hear, by the way, that when he was still alive, the Maharishi had to go to the dentist? And the dentist said, you've got a cavity. Would you like me to fill it? The Maharishi nodded, yes, that'd be very good. And then he said, well, would you like an injection to numb it? And the Maharishi said, no, I don't need that. I've learned to transcend the dental medication. Okay, so I'll continue. And so I did transcendental meditation. I was given my mantra and told that I wouldn't be really into it within the next, it'd take 10 years. Mind you, as a retired farmer, as a man who'd been a dairy farmer, I looked like a wrestler, just climbed out the ring in those days. Today I'm slim and that, but those days I was muscles on muscles. And so I didn't look like I'd be good, but he didn't know that in my past incarnation, I had spent over 25 years meditation, weeks at a time of meditation. He didn't know that. So I got to be good at it and I found it boring. This stupid mantra. After 18 months, I thought, I got a choice here. I either go nuts or I give up meditation. So I quit that, and then I moved to Rudolf Steiner, where you visualize, you do a lot of visualization. That really appealed to me. And I did that for quite a while. And then I realized, okay, I'm not a meditator. It's very obvious I'm not a meditator, but I do have a vivid imagination. And I began to work in my own way of creating what I call metaphysical scenarios. But today, my meditation, basically I get up, I walk into the bathroom, I look in the mirror and say, God, I'm still perfect. Thank you. This will do for the day. And that's it, I'm done. But I take that energy all the way through the day. And so too many people sit in meditation, leave it in the chair under a blanket sometimes, some of them do, and then go away. And that doesn't work. So your meditation, which I agree with, meditation is very good, but you need to know your own nature. Are you a type that have that passivity to meditate? Because I don't. I thought I was a passive spiritual teacher until this whole thing started. And then I started, no, I'm not sitting here listening to this rubbish. And so I started on my Facebook speaking out against it. I realized a spiritual warrior was there, having great fun, enjoying it. And so you've got to be true to yourself, not the identity, but that person in you that you're gradually allowing to emerge, that you don't need to understand, you don't need to know, but you just allow it to come out more and more, more and more, more and more. And if people say you're changing, then what's changing? It doesn't matter. You let the intellect get on with doing what you're good at, like now, interviewing and that sort of thing. You allow the intellect to be your tool and you allow your divine intelligence to come out. IQ, it's all rubbish. Intelligence is in consciousness. Consciousness and intelligence are inseparable. And here's me, a school dropout. I find there's as much intelligence as I want to use. There's no ceiling to it. I can follow it as far as I want. I can find it in rocks, in trees, in the universe. It's there, and it's for all of us, and it's an abundance, but not through the intellect. It comes through direct knowing, direct mystical cognition, direct connection.
I love that. I know we're hitting on time, but I need to talk to you about that one story at the end of the book where you talk about where you're kind of giving a story, but it's your story, right? Like where you talk about you see the fence.
It's a metaphor, really.
Yeah. Can you talk about that?
You're seeking enlightenment, and it's like you're living you've got a big fence around you, and you're seeking enlightenment, and maybe 15 years go by, and one day you see this fence. You think, God, I've got a fence around me. How do people get in and out when nobody else sees a fence? They walk in and out, nobody sees a fence, but you see a fence. And then you go to the fence and you try to beat it down. You try to get a sledgehammer, you smash away at it, spend several years smashing away at this fence. And it doesn't break because it isn't there, but you see it and it's there. And you talk to people about it. What do you do about the fence around you? What fence? And finally you realize people think you're weird and you're alone, and you're very, very alone. Your closest friends, nobody really understands you. And in that process, you begin to let go of the need to be understood. And that's a wonderful one, to let go. And then one day you're sitting there staring at the fence and you see there's just a tiny chink of light coming through. God, I don't remember that. That wasn't there. Was that there yesterday? And you go over to the chink of light and you think, now, what do I do? So you get the sledgehammer again, smash, 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 and you finish smashing and there's no chink of light. And so you go back and sit down, no chink of light. Next day you look, there is a chink of light. And so you don't do anything anymore. You sit down and you look at that chink of light, and gradually, 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 the chink of light grows. And one day you walk over and you step through the fence that isn't there. There is no fence. There's no chink of light. There is no fence. But you step out into a greater reality. And you realize you're seeing a world that very few other people see. I've never met anybody who sees the greater world that I see. And that's okay. You're comfortable with that. And once again, you're comfortable with people. So you see the illusion, you see the greater reality. And you continue in the dream, but you're no longer in it. You walk in the dream awake. You play with the illusion and do what you have to do in it, but you see the greater reality. And the greater reality, it's always been there. But you can't get through it by force. The intellect can't take you through it. It's a surrender. It's a complete surrender. So that's what you do. You surrender to the fence. You just surrender, and you keep surrendering, and you keep surrendering till the word surrender takes on a totally new meaning. And then you find you've never surrendered in your life. And then you follow this different surrender where every part in you sort of collapses, there's no resistance. And it's almost as though a membrane within you parts. And there's this immense freedom, and the wall's gone, you're free, and but nobody knows what you're talking about. And you read about freedom, and you read a book. Love is the greatest of the emotions, and you realize a woman's never experienced love because love is not an emotion. Love is the power of creation, and you write about it, but you don't get attached to anybody understanding.
Wow, that's some powerful stuff. But like, I struggle with sometimes, but
you struggle because your intellect has got a question and it wants an answer.
Yeah,
so
I struggle with
your program says, hey, it ain't easy, man. You've got to struggle. Look, enlightenment is as close to you. If you're sitting down for breakfast, you've got your toast sitting there, you've got your butter sitting there, and your marmalade sitting there. And it's which one will I choose today? It's toast. That's how close to enlightenment. Butter, that's how close to enlightenment is. Marmalade, that's how close to enlightenment. So you do a 360-degree turn. And so you're looking in the opposite direction. And what you see, you don't understand. You don't understand it. And you say to intellect, okay, we're going to change our relationship. You do what I tell you to do and chuck your questions away. I'm going to go with the moment. I'm going to surrender into that moment. I'm going to surrender into love. I'm going to surrender into peace. I'm going to surrender into joy. I'm going to surrender into everything that lives in the moment and never comes out. And the intellect say, how are you going to do that? And then you just laugh because you don't need to know how you're going to do it. It's going to happen because you are the world.
Michael J. Rhodes, how can people find out more about you?
Well, that's an interesting one. For many, many years, I hid away from people. I traveled the world, but I avoided publicity. And it was only after my late wife died that I thought I had a choice. I either continue as a spiritual teacher and reach out to the world, or I quit. Quitting was very tempting because I love nature and I could just have a great big garden and play for the rest of my life. And I decided, no, that's not why I'm here. Mixile came to give, and he came to find what he's found. He's brought it all into balance, and now it's my turn to give. And oddly, the giving is starting more now since COVID online, because I can now reach out to more people. So people like you help me. People like you who share out and say, this guy, maybe he has something worthwhile listening to. People, I need you, people like you, as much as you need people like me.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, I can't thank you enough for joining the show. This has been fantastic, and we got to do it again.
I'm willing, I'm open to doing it again, and I can't thank you enough for having me on. And if you can put me out there to more Americans, I'm not very well known in America. In Europe, I have quite a big, I hate the word following, but in America, Michael who?